Imagine the greatest achievement in human history. A moment etched into our collective consciousness. Neil Armstrong's first steps on the moon. But what if I told you that, just hours before he made that monumental leap, another nation's spacecraft was plummeting towards the lunar surface in a desperate, secret race to beat America? This isn't just the story of Apollo 11. It's the untold drama of a Cold War sprint to the very edge of the cosmos. The year is 1969. The world is a chessboard, and the superpowers are locked in a tense, ideological struggle. The Cold War, a battle of wills and technology, had long since spilled over into space. For over a decade, the Soviet Union had dominated the cosmic frontier, launching Sputnik, Yuri Gagarin, and the first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova. Each Soviet triumph sent shivers down the spine of America, a nation desperate to reclaim its technological supremacy. President John F. Kennedy understood the stakes. On the 25th of May 1961, he stood before Congress and declared, unequivocally, his nation's intent. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. It was an audacious, almost reckless promise, given that at the time, America had barely managed a suborbital flight. But it ignited a fire, galvanizing a nation and setting in motion an engineering marvel of unprecedented scale. Over the next 8 years, a staggering 400,000 individuals, engineers, scientists, technicians, and administrators, would pour their lives into the Apollo program. This wasn't just about rockets. It was about inventing an entirely new industry, pushing the boundaries of material science, computing, and human endurance. They built the colossal Saturn V rocket, a 3-stage behemoth standing 111 meters tall, capable of generating 34.5 million newtons of thrust at launch. Each stage was a meticulously crafted, disposable masterpiece, designed to propel a tiny capsule across 250,000 miles of vacuum. On the 16th of July 1969, from Launch Complex 39A at Cape Kennedy, Florida, the world held its breath. Aboard Apollo 11 sat 3 men: Neil Armstrong, the stoic commander; Buzz Aldrin, the cerebral lunar module pilot; and Michael Collins, the solitary command module pilot. Their destination, the moon. Their mission, to fulfill Kennedy's promise. The journey itself was fraught with peril. 3 days later, as the command module, Columbia, and the lunar module, Eagle, orbited the moon, Michael Collins was alone. His role was crucial, yet profoundly isolating. He would remain in orbit, circling the moon every 2 hours, as Armstrong and Aldrin descended. He later recalled the profound solitude. It suddenly struck me that that tiny pea, pretty and blue, was the Earth. For 28 orbits, he was the most isolated human being in existence. Knowing that if anything went wrong with Eagle, he would return to Earth alone. But the real drama unfolded on the 20th of July 1969. As Eagle began its powered descent towards the Sea of Tranquility, alarms blared. The onboard computer, with less processing power than a modern calculator, was overloaded. Program alarms 1201 and 1202 flashed, threatening an abort. Ground control, calm amidst the chaos, quickly realized the computer was simply prioritizing critical tasks, discarding lower priority data. "We're go on that alarm," came the reassuring voice from Houston. Then, a new crisis. The landing site, The autopilot was guiding Eagle towards a boulder-strewn crater. A death trap. Armstrong, displaying incredible composure, took manual control. He flew the module like a helicopter, skimming over the treacherous terrain, searching for a safe spot. The fuel gauge plummeted. 60 seconds, called Aldrin. Then, 30 seconds. The tension in the cockpit and in mission control was unbearable. Seconds stretched into an eternity. With just 17 seconds of fuel remaining, Armstrong found it. A smooth, flat patch. Houston. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Silence. Then, an explosion of relief and jubilation across the globe. But here's the crazy part. The detail that truly underscores the brutal reality of the space race. While the world celebrated Apollo 11's success, the Soviet Union had been running its own desperate, secret mission, Luna 15. Launched just 3 days before Apollo 11. Luna 15 was an unmanned probe designed to collect lunar soil samples and return them to Earth before the Americans could. It was a last-ditch effort to snatch a symbolic victory from the jaws of defeat. As Armstrong and Aldrin prepared for their historic EVA, Luna 15 was making its own descent. But unlike Eagle, Luna 15 was not guided by human hands. On the 20th of July 1969, just hours before Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface, Luna 15 crashed into the moon. A Soviet attempt to scoop the Americans, ending in silent failure, overshadowed by the very triumph it sought to prevent. The world barely noticed. So fixated were they on the American achievement. Back on the moon. At 2:56 Coordinated Universal Time on the 21st of July, Neil Armstrong descended the ladder. His words, broadcast to an estimated 600 million people worldwide, became immortal. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. It was a moment of profound unity, transcending borders and ideologies, if only for a brief time. Buzz Aldrin soon followed. But you probably didn't know this. But his very first act on the lunar surface was deeply personal and spiritual. He took communion, pouring consecrated wine into a chalice and reciting scripture. A quiet, profound moment of reflection amidst the alien landscape. He had brought the elements with him. A quiet act of faith in a place of ultimate science. They spent 2.5 hours outside the lunar module, collecting 21.5 kilograms of lunar samples, deploying scientific instruments, and planting the stars and stripes. The flag, by the way, was a standard nylon flag purchased from a government catalog, rigged with a telescoping pole and wire to make it appear to wave in the vacuum. Another fascinating tidbit. Neil Armstrong carried a small piece of history with him on his journey, a fragment of fabric and a piece of wood from the wing of the Wright Flyer, the aircraft that made the first successful flight in 1903. It was a poetic link between humanity's first tentative liftoff from Earth and its first steps on another world. And what if it had all gone wrong? You probably didn't know this, but President Richard Nixon had a contingency speech prepared to be read in the event that Armstrong and Aldrin became stranded on the moon. It began chillingly. Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon too. Rest in peace. A stark reminder of the immense risks involved. But they didn't stay. After 21 hours and 36 minutes on the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin rejoined Collins in orbit. On the 24th of July 1969, Columbia splashed down safely in the Pacific Ocean. The astronauts, however, weren't immediately greeted as heroes. Due to fears of lunar pathogens, they were subjected to a 21-day quarantine, living in a mobile isolation facility. And in a bizarre bureaucratic twist, upon their return to Earth, they were even required to fill out customs forms, declaring their lunar rock and dust samples as moon rocks and moon dust. A mundane administrative task for an utterly out-of-this-world journey. The moon landing was more than a scientific achievement. It was a cultural phenomenon. It proved what humanity could achieve when united by a common, ambitious goal. It pushed the boundaries of technology, inspiring generations and laying the groundwork for countless innovations we now take for granted. It was a triumph of audacity, ingenuity, and sheer human will. Even with all the challenges, the near misses, the secret races, and the incredible human endeavor, the moon landing remains a beacon of what is possible. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest leaps forward are made not because they are easy, but precisely because they are hard, fraught with danger, and demand every ounce of our collective brilliance. Subscribe to Extrano Chronicles for more untold history.